Shenanigans.
All right, next hot topic is mine. As you, yeah, this is a deep one. So, as you know, Black History Month starts tomorrow. So I thought it was some time for some truth. We need to discuss this. So the Biden administration announced that it plans to continue Barack Obama's plan to put Harriet Tubman's face on the $20 bill. Now, for those in our audience who may not know who Harriet Tubman is, she escaped slavery just prior to the U.S. Civil War. There's some people that may not. There's some people
I mean, okay. Yeah.
escaped slavery just prior to the U.S. Civil War and was a key figure in the Underground Railroad, which helped to free what is estimated to be as many as 100,000 slaves from captivity. She was also a spy in the Civil War for the Union Army. Now, her image would replace Andrew Jackson, a notoriously racist president, both known for owning hundreds of slaves and for his brutal genocidal policies towards Native Americans.
Look up the Trail of Tears, people. Look up the Trail of Tears.
Google it. Based on the current designs, a statue of Jackson would still be on the back, while Harriet Tubman would be on the front. Of course, there's a ton of racists that hate the idea. That's why Trump halted the plan throughout his presidency. But many Americans are excited about the tribute to Tubman, viewing it as a progressive and bold rebuke of an ugly era in American history. But there is a small subset of people that claim putting Tubman on the $20 bill tarnishes her legacy. Some people like Brittany Cooper, a professor at Rutgers, believes putting Tubman on legal tender when slaves in the U.S. were treated as commodities is a form of disrespect. She says the imagery of her face changing hands to exchange cash for goods and services is similar to slaves being handed over as payment for white debt or anything white slave owners wanted. Also, activist Feminista Jones says Harriet Tubman did not fight for capitalism. She repeatedly put herself in the line of fire to free people who were treated themselves as currency. And she also noted that Tubman died impoverished in 1913. All right, so my simple question for you guys, are you for or against the Tubman on the 20? Why or why not? Let me start with Gianni on this one.
I feel like making the pioneer of Black slave freedom the face of like a capitalist system is where are we going with this? I I I understand the representation. I understand the representation, but it's like for Black people, I think we see like representation as a form of progression, and it's like okay, but Harriet didn't really stand for this system. She didn't. I don't think that it makes sense for her to be the face of it, or like one of the faces, because she's not like on all of the bills, but in a way. So I think that I'm kind of partial because I don't think that is disrespectful, like the article mentioned. I don't think it's a disrespectful thing, but I do think it's like backwards, or it's just kind of like irrelevant a little bit. But yeah, I'm curious to see what you guys say because I'm impartial still. Even after reading that, I'm still partial about it. I don't think it's a good idea, but I just don't deeply know why.
Okay. Robbie Rock?
So yeah.
Well, it's to me, I look at it and it is commemorative. And to Johnny's point, if I look at who's currently on the money, these aren't great capitalists that are
Robbie's making
being
my point.
commemorated. These are leaders. So Harriet Tubman was a leader, and I think that to me, this is on par with it. It's as disrespectful as erecting a statue of her in public, in my opinion. It is commemorative. She did a lot of great stuff during the Civil War. She helped shape the fabric of the nation. So why not commemorate her? And then that's it. The people, the racists that have an issue with it, well, good. Chew on it just a little bit. Spend that 20 a little bit faster. Drive the economy, whatever. But out of curiosity, how many Black leaders are currently on American currency?
Robbie made my point. Okay, Lizzie?
Okay, good point.
To answer that question, none. There are no Black leaders currently on American currency. However, Harriet Tubman is not the only Black leader. And so this was a topic that I never really thought about the other side because initially, like a lot of Black people in this country, I was all for it. But then when I read, some of the arguments in this article that were against it, I started to think and I started to do my research. And so my question to everyone who is emphatically for it, and I'm just speaking in terms of Harriet Tubman as the individual, not as having, any Black leader, but her specifically. Anyone who is emphatically for it, how many of you are walking around with Che Guevara t-shirts on? Well, one, how many of you know who Che Guevara?
Yeah, there you go. That's you got to answer your question.
How many? Let me say it with an American accent. How many of you know who Che Guevara is? The Argentine revolutionary socialist activist. How many of you are walking around proudly with his t-shirt on? Because those of you who are might need to look further into his political ideology. He was very much against capitalism. He would have abhorred the fact that people are paying for a t-shirt with his image on it. He would have hated if we had put, or if Argentina had put. He was also a part of the Cuban revolutionary movement. Okay. But he would have abhorred people making money off of his likeness, or his likeness being put on any type of currency. And so with people who are questioning the intent of having Harriet Tubman on American currency, it's the same thing. Like, this isn't what she specifically was about. So if we were to honor her, there are other ways to honor her, who she was, her message, and her legacy, besides putting her, like, there are tons of Black leaders who didn't have the same mindset as it related to capitalism as Harriet Tubman. And so I started to think about that and be like, okay, well, maybe she specifically is not the best choice. And then when you go on to say, Neo, in the article, it explains that she's going to be on the front.
Yeah, she's going to be the front. Jackson's still going to be on the back. On the current designs, they still could adjust the design.
That is some bullshit. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. Because you have two people with two conflicting ideologies about race, about imperialism, about freedom, about even capitalism on the same bill. That makes absolutely no sense. And so that means now that you're not really interested in what Harriet Tubman stood for. Now you're pandering. Now you're trying to shut Black folks up. So don't give me a bill that has Harriet Tubman on the front and Andrew Jackson.
I didn't like that either. That's one thing I didn't like. So my thoughts are this. So there's always a reason not to do something. You can always find good reasons, like, not to do something. Manned mission to Mars, super exciting, great for future generations, but people might die, costs too much. Take the COVID vaccine, hundreds of thousands of lives saved, including my own, but might kill me. Sign up for a 401k. You might have some money to retire on, but it might lose everything too. There's always like a good and a bad reason to do something. And, it's all about perspective. So you can choose to look at it like, hey, Black people are being used again as commodities. But if you consider being on currency has always been one of the highest honors in virtually every country, not every country, but and the U.S. has typically reserved that for only white presidents. And now it's being bestowed on one of our truly greatest American heroes.
A hero who would have rejected the concept, though.
Do we know that?
If you do your research and look at what she stood for, then yes, we do know that. She wasn't about capitalism.
But was she about the progressiveness of Blacks in general? See, it's about perspective. What was she for?
You could be about the progression of Blacks without putting me on currency that is, i.e., a symbolism of capitalism.
Again,
that's what I'm saying. There are other Black people that you could put on that $20 bill that was not against capitalism.
That would make more sense.
But for me, she is a great hero. I would love to see her representation, and I would love to push it up in everybody's face to say, hey, this is an important person in our history. And I think
on considering
Billions of people are touching, seeing, feeling her, learning about her, understanding her every single day because they see her image. Who is this woman on this currency? And they want to learn more about her. That
I even reject that ideology. How many people look at Andrew Jackson right now and want to know who he is?
The only reason I would have cared about Andrew Jackson is because
But I'm not asking you why you care. I'm going by your argument that if Harriet Tubman is on the $20 bill, people are going to be curious. No, people are going to spend that 20. No one's curious about Andrew Jackson. The average person doesn't even know he was a racist, knows nothing about the Trail of Tears.
They say his name constantly when they were on rap videos, and they talk about getting those Jacksons. And I mean, it's if you think about branding, he's been branded extremely well by being on a $20 bill.
Jacksons of a racist, of a guy,
which is bad, right? That's my point. We change it to something positive.
Exactly. They don't know who it is. Exactly. So if we wouldn't be having this conversation about changing the person that's on the $20 bill, then we can't make those salient points that Jackson was a racist and he was a slave owner. So by having those conversations, you drive it further, and then you will eventually have him removed from the currency.
I want to say I knew he was a racist, and I knew he killed a lot of Native Americans. And
having the conversation.
I hated the fact that he was on the 20.
American is not having those conversations. These are scholars. The average American does not care who's on the currency. They're not looking at him trying to figure out what his history is.
Just the fact that the racists are talking about it now, it's a conversation. The fact that we're talking about it now, it's a conversation.
I think we'll care now because it's a new thing. You know, Harry now we'll care, but yeah, originally I think.
About it, even as we're talking about it, you said you really didn't know her political ideology.
No, I didn't say that. I said, do you?
No.
No, let me clarify. I didn't say that I didn't know.
They're going to profit off of her image, which is something she would have.
I questioned whether or not you understood her ideology because
Me?
Yeah, that's what I was questioning. Do you know what she was thinking in her head? Do you know what she? Because you weren't there. You just know your history book.
I've studied her though.
But that doesn't mean you know what she stood for.
But I've studied her writing. I've studied her speeches. I've studied what she said about capitalism, about exploitation. So yes, I think I do know just a little bit about what she is talking about. Again, the same with Che, because you didn't know who he was, Guevara, and how he would be capitalist.
Guevara.
Anti-capitalist, and would be a.
I'm not going to own that. If I don't know it, I don't know it.
T-shirts on that are paying money for T-shirts that have his face on it.
Dario Winner, let's go to the online. Let's go to comments on. Gianni,
my statement. It does nothing to honor somebody for something that they were against.
All right. Well, Gianni, you wanted to say something real quick, and then we'll go to online.
No, I was just gonna ask Liz is what she meant, like basically that Harriet Tubman wouldn't be honored in this way. So yeah, she kind of answered.
Dario Winner made a great point. So, do people look at the commemorative stamp in the same way because it's a commodity as well?
Honestly, I look at a stamp as something that I put on my envelope to mail stuff.
You have to buy it, sell it, and
I don't.
Just like you did with slaves, and you have to, and it's to.
I don't really get into what it means. It's history. But that's just me. Like it's something that's a very quick transaction. It's not something that I'm looking to get history from.
So Olivia says, how about if someone gave me the Harriet bill and said, let me buy your black ass? Not sure.
What?
No, don't know if I.
Oh my God.
All right. Mike Wolf says, I'm not going to argue against putting women of color on the bill for the first time. However, I'm also not going to argue with anyone, especially people of color, about whether it's appropriate for Harriet Tubman specifically to be on the money. Mostly, I'm not going to pat myself on the back thinking there's not a lot more than this, that there's not a lot more than this that we need to do about racism. So,
I have a question. Why Harriet Tubman? How did y'all pick Harriet Tubman?
I was thinking that
I'm not exactly sure why they picked Harriet Tubman. I thought it was an unusual pick as well, I have to admit.
Yeah.
I thought it really didn't fit Um,
Even Madam C.J. Walker, she
MLK.
was like a huge businesswoman. Like, was she not? She was definitely into
but
capitalism.
she
Like
wasn't.
that kind
She
of.
didn't make a significant. She made an impact, no question. But if you're looking at the black person that has made the most significant impact historically, I would put Harriet Tubman as one of the highest people as far as heroes for black people in historically
Oh yeah,
in the United
absolutely.
States. I mean, if we're going to honor somebody, that is the person you honor
But you have to
outside
also
of
honor, you
Martin
have
Luther
to
King,
also
who had his
honor,
issues.
but you have to also honor who that person was in its
Yeah.
totality. In
Perhaps.
its totality.
All right.
Yo said perhaps.
So Mike Winter said the reason I like it is that it makes people talk about who she was. And I have learned that many white people do not know at all. They have the choice to not see the movie or learn the history. So I am for the representation of her in particular, liberty, people on money, which people cannot eschew. And me and Mike
And
Winter
again,
actually don't agree all the time either, but I totally agree
and
with this.
listen, Mike Winter is one of my best friends on the planet. We disagree on 60, maybe just 75% of all topics in life. And that's fine. That's fine. You can disagree with someone. But as I said before, people aren't looking at their currency and then going to an encyclopedia and then going to the library. And especially the white folks that you guys have said need to be educated the most in this country, they're not going to be looking at that. Again, they don't even know who Andrew
I
Jackson is.
disagree with you though,
They don't even know
especially
who
if she's the only black person on the currency.
again, I pull rank as an educator.
I
One,
disagree.
we're not being
Branding. I understand branding. I mean,
educated
Yeah.
on this stuff in school, and we certainly aren't being educated or looking to seek education about these things when we're making quick
I just
transactions.
disagree with you.
So Liz,
I think it's
I
more
have
than just a quick transaction. It's a
better way.
significant
there
statement to
is.
be on the currency. I think it's more than just a
It
transaction.
absolutely is.
Let me ask
Even
you
from
this.
the outside looking in, Liz, as a Canadian, when I look at American currency, when I was a kid, I started learning about American history and politics because I was fascinated with your currency that was so similar yet so different, but very different to mine. To me, it was just like, well, wait a minute, what do you have? White
Who's
to
Ben
be like the
Franklin?
monarch, the queen is on most of our currency. We have animals on our currency, but for the Americans, like I would just kind of go, okay, so
And Rob, I would
like
say
the
you are
Jacksons,
an
the
anomaly.
Benjamins.
I would say you are an
I
anomaly.
disagree. I think
If
your view is an anomaly, actually.
No, I think my view is my view. I'm not saying everyone has to buy into what I'm saying. But again, as an educator, as someone who sees students, who interacts with students every single day, one who was a journalist, who was out in the street talking to people, there's no immediate interest into currency, into faces, into history. It's just not there. If you walk up to the average American person on the street, they're not even going to be able to identify the people who are on our currency. They're not. That's the thing. Like, I don't even like.
I don't believe that's true. I know people know George. I knew George Washington because of the currency. I didn't care about George
George
Washington otherwise.
Washington.
I
George
knew
Washington was the
Ben
first president.
Franklin.
However, no,
Benjamin.
Ben Franklin, most people think Ben
He's his
Franklin was
image. His image is burned in my head from the currency, not from any other pictures.
in this country think Ben Franklin was a president. That's
Right.
how much they
And
know about him.
that's another good reason why we should have someone like Harriet
They
Tubman.
don't know about him.
We just have
That's
some
how much
other stupid white man on our currency.
they don't know about him. They don't care. They talk about the President Benjamin Franklin. And
I don't think he's a president. I knew he
I
wasn't a
said,
president.
I said
I
most,
feel
but
like
then again,
originally, I'm sorry. I feel like originally though, Liz is right. I don't think people like if Harriet Tubman been on the $20 bill, people wouldn't like it was like we don't look at money like that. But I think now, if Harriet Tubman is now on the $20 bill, I think people will be interested only because it's something
Different.
new. Like we've never done this to our currency. And then
Different.
I just
You want to
think that
understand it.
it'll just it's something new in general. So I think people like a credit card when it first came out. Like it's like, oh, what is this? So I think it'll just spike people's interest, but I think I kind of agree with both of you. Like It's like originally I don't think people care enough to do the research, but now I think they'll care. Like now it'll be something that they'll look into.
Here's also something to consider, and I'm just talking about me. Maybe I'm different from the average American at this point. I probably haven't held a $20 bill in my hand in over 2 years.
Oh yeah,
that's true.
Wow.
I mean, cash is kind of like now. If that was the point where the cash is like pointless now, then you might be right on that one.
So,
Cash is kind of.
I think if you look into it from various angles, it becomes an empty gesture. Whereas if you really want to honor her, we can do that in other ways that are more effective and are more educational, and ways that honored who.
Outside of what's already happened, can you what are you suggesting? Outside
what
of
other way to
what
honor
other
her?
ways that are similar to or as significant as being on currency?
Honestly, this wasn't my idea, so I don't have other ways. But first and foremost, let's start.
She's been on stamps. I mean,
let's start in the classroom. Let's start in the classroom. I don't know, and this is one of the few segments.
I don't think it has the same reach, though. Individual classrooms doesn't have the same reach.
This is from the this is one of the few segments of Real Housewives of Atlanta that I've ever watched, because I don't watch the TV show. However, there was a character on that show, Portia, whatever her name is. She used to be married to somebody that I went to college with. So they were talking about the Underground Railroad. Okay. She thought that there is an actual train under.
I mean, there are stupid people out there. Come on. I'm not going to fight you on the fact that there's stupid people out there.
That's why I say it needs to start in the classroom.
I mean, this is going, even if it starts in the classroom, there's going to be stupid people in your classroom too. Who don't get it.
And people proud to, identify, the Underground Railroad. I may have been on it,
but we went way over. So, but there are some good comments that came up. I do want to try to get these in. Mike Winter says, then why should we have commemorative stamps of Black heroes? April Burns says, in Canada, we've had the...
I never said we should not have stamps of Black heroes. I never said that.
But it is similar because it's still it's a trade.
It depends on the hero. Why would you have...
But you're still trading the face of someone else as... I mean, you're still trading Black people. If you're making the same argument, you're trading Black people.
You're purchasing a federal service with your money with a picture of a Black individual. If that's what you're doing when you're purchasing a stamp.
But I'm not talking about a random Black individual. I'm talking about an individual who would be opposed to that.
Yeah.
That's
so Harriet Tubman stamps.
Oh, yeah.
There are Harriet Tubman stamps already.
But we weren't talking about that. We were talking about the currency. Like we can talk about.
They're equating this currency to the stamp.
So then stamps as well. But my point is, why would you do something that dishonors a person's ideology when you could pick someone else? She's not the only Black leader.
Well, to your point, Olivia E says, why not Barack Obama? I mean, he is Black and a president. I don't think he's accomplished enough yet, but that's just. And of course, he was president when the whole idea started. So.
On the currency, I don't think he.
Yeah, absolutely not on the currency.
No.
Mike Wolf says we mostly had presidents on money, so what we need to do is elect more Black and women as president. All right. All right, so good. Let's move on. Let's move on to our next hot topic. We were way over time again. I'm sorry. I didn't want to stop the conversation. It was a deep conversation. It was a good conversation.
Y'all. History.